You're listening to the Prepper Recon podcast. For questions, comments, and podcast archives, go to prepperrecon.com. Ready Made Resources is a trusted name in the prepper community because they've been around for 18 years. They offer great prices on night vision, water filtration, long-term storage food, solar energy components, and provide free technical service. Get ready for an uncertain future at readymaderesources.com. Trading Post in the Woods is ran by veteran crisis responders who know how important it is to be prepared. They specialize in comprehensive natural survival remedy kits, preparedness and homesteading supplies, as well as skills training. Visit them online today at tradingpostinthewoods.com. This is the second half of my guest appearance on The Self-Sufficient Life with Tim Young. Enjoy the show.
We're back with the story of Mark Goodwin. We've traveled with Mark as he first worshiped drugs before finding faith in God. And that newfound faith, fueled by a pastor's command that he go write a book, has put Mark on a path to earning self-sufficient income as an author. But what made Mark think that he could make it as a writer anyway? I mean, were there any signs?
When I was in grade school, middle school, I was a fairly good student. I would always get on my report card, daydreams too much, which, now being a, what I would consider a successful author, I guess it's sort of paying off.
Still, Mark had never written a book before and wasn't really sure where to start. But he was reformed now, and his faith was strong, so he knew exactly where to look for inspiration.
I liken it to Noah's call. God tells Noah that there's a storm coming and that he's got to take action to start getting prepared. So he gets this divine call. He gets the directions for building the ark, and then he just buckles down and does it. And so he puts everything he's got into building this ark, and without ever having seen rain before. So, I had no idea what it was like to be an author. But I just followed that call and started doing it. And then, Noah sort of runs up against this wall where he gets the boat built, but now how's he going to get all of these animals to get in the boat? That's something that's beyond what he's able to do. So God just sends all the animals 2 by 2, but God didn't build the boat for him. God didn't supply the boat. He expected him to be involved, and he expected him to do everything he could possibly do. And then when you hit that wall and you can't do anything else, that's when God steps in.
Metaphorically, that sounds to me like Mark figured it was his job to write the book, and then the customers would just come and buy it. 2 by 2. That sounds easy enough, but I can tell you that writing is anything but that. I'm not talking about the craft of writing so much as I am the business of writing, because Mark was self-publishing his book, something Amazon makes super easy to do. Probably too easy, because many authors fail to appreciate the full complement of skills a publisher brings to the table. Cover design, story editing, copy editing, proofreading, and of course, marketing. When you self-publish, it's your job to professionally handle all of those tasks. Many authors didn't do that, of course, when Amazon opened the floodgates to easily create Kindle and print books. So self-publishing often got a bad rap, deservedly so. And Mark wasn't starting out with the one thing publishers like to see you bring to the table, besides a good book. And that's a strong platform. What I mean is a following. It's hard to get readers if you're a new author with a following. It's almost impossible without that. And that's where Mark found himself. But he, or divine inspiration, made 2 wise choices in genre. The first was to choose Christian as a category, which appeals to a passionate base of readers. The second was to choose post-apocalyptic fiction as a subcategory, which was about to become white hot as a genre. So Mark just plunged ahead.
When I first started writing, I didn't have any confidence or any thought that I was going to be an author. My first thought is like, well, maybe I could write this book, put it out there for free. Maybe, a few hundred people will read it if I give it to them for free. And and then they'll want to read the second installment, and maybe I'll sell 50 copies of the second book. My wife convinced me, just try selling it first, and if nobody buys it, then you can give it away. So I listened to her, thank God for wives, and it just started selling. And the series total, I don't have the exact numbers, but the series total for the Economic Collapse Chronicles, which was my first 3-book series, is somewhere around it's somewhere north of 30,000 copies have sold. And then if you factor in the Kindle Unlimited reads, it would be well past 40,000 copies.
That's a remarkable number. There are close to 5 million titles on the Kindle store today, which means that the biggest problem for new authors is being discovered. That's why it's so critical to have a platform before you publish. But clearly the readers found Mark's books and they liked them. Of course, there are other places to publish than Amazon, such as Kobo, Barnes & Noble, iBooks. But Mark is taking the approach that almost all American self-published authors are. He's aiming squarely at Amazon. And one reason he's doing that is to take advantage of Amazon's Kindle Unlimited program.
I think if somebody decides that they're going to self-publish, there's one big question that they have to ask themselves, and that's whether they're going to go wide or whether they're going to go exclusive. And now wide means that you're going to publish on Amazon, but you're also going to publish on Kobo and iBooks and maybe Barnes and Noble. And then exclusive means that you can only put your books on Amazon. And that's any of the Amazon products. You can have it in Create Space, so you can have a paperback book there. You can have your ebooks, and this only concerns the ebook if you decide to go exclusive. But if you decide to go exclusive, your Kindle book or your ebook can only appear on Amazon. And now, if you decide to do that, they give you certain perks. They allow you to be in the Kindle Unlimited program, which is a subscription model where users pay $10 a month and they can read unlimited books that are on the Kindle Unlimited program. When this first started out, it was really just sort of a little sort of icing on the cake, so to speak. But as it's grown, that Kindle Unlimited program has really, really become a huge revenue stream for me. I could have a month where I might make $2,000 just from Kindle Unlimited, whereas Kindle Unlimited used to just be, maybe a couple $100 a month. And then on top of that, the Kindle Unlimited is a big booster for your ranking, so that it pushes your book higher in the ranking, so that you're going to get more sales. So it's this sort of synergetic thing that starts happening if you go exclusive. And if you're post-apocalyptic, like I am, if that's the genre that you write in, you almost have to be in Kindle Unlimited, because I'd say 90% of the top 50 post-apocalyptic books at any given time, they're all on Kindle Unlimited, and you absolutely cannot compete in that genre without being Kindle Unlimited. So it's going to really depend on what the genre is that you're writing in, whether or not it's going to make sense to go wide or to go exclusive. And for me, for post-apocalyptic, you would never make up in revenue what you're going to sell on Kobo and iBooks and Barnes and Noble Nook. You'll never make that up, what you're going to lose in the Kindle Unlimited page read.
Of course, Kindle Unlimited is an Amazon subscription service. For $10 a month, readers can access a huge library of books from participating authors. Authors like Mark participate because they share in the Kindle Unlimited fund, based on how many pages are read of their books. As Mark said, some months he can make a couple $1,000s from that. Participating turned out to be a really good choice for Mark, because even though he had started his podcast and blog well before writing his first book, his listeners and blog readers didn't line up for his books.
It was just enough to give me a boost. There's not a whole lot of crossover between the podcast listeners and the readers. There's probably more now, but in the beginning, I would say it was probably less than 10% of my listeners were actually readers, because it's a podcast and you're listening to information as opposed to reading fiction. There's starting to be more crossover for the audiobooks with the podcast listeners, because whatever that time is that they listen to podcasts, whether it's at the gym or they have a long commute to work, or when they're doing yard work or in the garden, or whenever it is that they're finding time to listen to podcasts, that's also time that they could be listening to a fiction book as well. And being in the same vein with preparedness, and it's all my books have these different survival scenarios that sort of forces people to ask themselves, if I was in the shoes of the protagonist right now, would my skills, would the preps that I have, would I be able to survive that? So it gives people the sort of an opportunity to sort of escape reality, have some good, clean entertainment, because there's no sex scenes and there's no 4-letter words in any of my books at all. So it provides that, and it gives them an opportunity to sort of have sort of a rehearsal in their mind of how they would survive that event.
There are a lot of people trying to make a living writing Kindle books, and many more dreaming of it. You may be one of them. If you can pull it off, writing is a great way to generate self-sufficient income while you look at the wild turkeys wandering by, as I'm doing right now. Mark's approach to writing is similar to the way Stephen King describes his. Basically, put some people in a situation, then see what happens. In other words, he says he doesn't heavily plot the novel for each book, or even for the trilogy.
I didn't really even know what I was doing when I wrote the first book. It was just kind of happening in my head, and I just had this story, and it just, as I started getting more and more into the characters, and they were just sort of, I give them this, I give them some sort of apocalyptic event that they have to live through, and then I sort of I use a lot of people that are in my life as the characters, or as a basis for the characters, and I just basically take that person and put them in that situation, and it almost writes itself. So as I've grown more in my craft, I spend more time studying the craft now, and I've learned about the 3-act structure, and I've learned more about, tell me, don't show me, explaining things through dialogue, and spacing out your action events and things of that nature. So I think my books have probably grown a lot through doing that. But in the beginning, I really didn't know anything about that. But if that's what somebody wants to do, and I think that there's something like 3.5 million ebooks on Amazon right now. So as there's more and more books there, and the competition's getting stiffer and stiffer, I think that you do have to do some things to try to stand out. And the thing that I would recommend folks to do is to start working on their craft. And there's so many podcasts that's what they focus on.
Podcasts like Rocking Self-Publishing, The Self-Publishing Formula, and Mark's favorite, The Sell More Books Show. Mark has sold a lot of books and has carved out a great niche, but that doesn't mean he hasn't made mistakes. If you've listened to earlier shows, you've heard me say over and over again how important it is to build an email list. So many people fail to do that early on, and it's a mistake that costs them.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. The dollar's lost over 90% of its purchasing power since 1971. Silver, on the other hand, has proven to be a very stable form of wealth preservation over the years. And where do you buy silver? Silver.com, of course. Silver.com offers fantastic prices on gold and silver. Check out silver.com today. Whether your plan is to bug out or bug in, CampingSurvival.com has all of your preparedness needs, including fish antibiotics, long-term storage food, and water filters. Use coupon code PREPRECON for 5% off your order at CampingSurvival.com.
I wish from the very first book that I wrote, I wish if I could do everything over, I wish I would have put a lead generator for folks to sign up to my mailing list, because once somebody's read your book, most of the folks that read my books seem to enjoy it, and so I've got a customer. But now, after they finish that trilogy, they move on to the next thing and they forget about me. But now, if I've got them on an email list, and I can send them an email to say, "Hey, I'm starting another trilogy. Hey, I just put out the second book in this series. Hey, I've got a giveaway," whatever. I can keep that person engaged, and I don't have to keep going out and re-shopping for new customers every time, because every new series that you write is a new business that you're starting. Now, it's very, very similar to the business that you just did. So, if you're making shoes, hey, we just now we're making high heels. If you liked our tennis shoes, you'll love our high heels. You've got that customer list. You can let those folks know, and they like the quality of your tennis shoes. They're probably going to be very inclined to buy the high heels.
In addition to generating income as an author, Mark has a blog dedicated to his weekly podcast, Prepper Recon. It's actually a great case study, because when he started the podcast on prepping, he really didn't know that much about the subject. So Mark started an interview podcast and just learned on the job.
The only thing you have to know for a podcast is what you don't know. So if you know enough to know what you don't know, then you can ask the experts. So that's sort of what the podcast became. And now, after a little over 3 years of doing 2 shows a week with all the top experts in preparedness, I've sort of got a PhD in it just by listening to all of these other people.
Now, as I've said on other shows, it's one thing to start these blogs, these podcasts, out of passion. But you got to find a way to monetize them, because they cost money to produce, both real cost and lost opportunity cost. Now, the typical ways of doing that are selling ad space or doing an affiliate program. The most common affiliate program is Amazon affiliates, where bloggers add Amazon links on their website to promote products they endorse. I know you've seen them. If someone buys, the blogger gets a commission, and it doesn't cost the buyer anything else. Want to see a better example of what an affiliate program can be? Go to theselfsufficientlife.com/WordPress. You'll see me doing a video tutorial that shows how to launch a custom WordPress site in under 15 minutes. What I'm doing is promoting a company called Bluehost, which is the company I pay to host my site. If someone signs up for web hosting through my link, I get paid, and it doesn't cost the buyer anything extra. So many bloggers look for affiliate relationships like that they believe in, so they can generate income. But Mark started Prepper Recon with pretty modest financial expectations.
When I started the blog, when I started Prepper Recon, I said, my goal, I'm going to do this with the goal of within 1 year to have built enough audience to provide enough value to sponsors to generate $500 a month in sponsorship advertisement. And at the end of 1 year, I had pretty much almost exactly met that goal. And then it's grown considerably since that. And I decided to go with the sponsorship model rather than the subscription model, where you charge subscribers. And I think it works. And folks can tune in and listen to my show twice a week, and it never costs them a dime, and they never have to buy anything from any of my sponsors. But enough of them do that my sponsors find value in it, and they're more than happy to compensate me for the time of putting the show out there, which allows me to dedicate more of my time to putting out good shows and putting that information out there, because otherwise I'd have to go back to accounting or a restaurant or something that I hated.
So Mark opted for the sponsorship model and set a goal to sell at least $500 a month in ads on his site. And like many bloggers, especially back then, he experimented with AdWords, but ran into a big problem given the genre of his site.
I have experimented with AdWords. I did that for a little while. A lot of the being a staunch Christian, a lot of the ads that were getting served through Google are not representative of my values. you would just, sometimes you'd get things like these, AsianDating.com or RussianWives.com or these role player type real world video games where folks go in and interact, and a lot of the advertising for that are sort of it's not pornographic by any stretch of the word, but it's stuff that doesn't reflect who I am. And so I took all of that stuff down, and so the only thing I have are sponsors that provide a service or product that's relevant to the Prepper Recon message, and it's a company that I have either used or completely support, and they provide good value to my listeners. So if I get, if I find that I have an advertiser and there's a problem with products not being delivered or poor customer service or something like that, then I just cut them.
So far, the folks I've profiled on Self-Sufficient Life could accurately be described as homesteaders, farmers even. But Mark's different. He's a prepper, and that mindset is fully integrated into his life. After all, he writes novels that are essentially about Christian-based prepping. He's concerned about the direction our country's taking and the stability of the financial system. So he's made it a point to not only make preparations, but to shout into his Prepper Recon microphone, encouraging others to do the same. So you would think someone raised in rural Kentucky who grew to develop a fearful approach of modern society, that person would live in a rural retreat.
It's in the county. We're on a dirt road, but we've only got a quarter acre, but we really do the most we can to maximize that.
Yeah, okay, so you don't need 100 acres to homestead. You can easily grow pretty much all the food you can eat on an acre or less. But prepping isn't just about growing food. It's also about security and protecting the preparations you've made. And that's one of the reasons people with a prepared mindset want to live in rural settings. Lower population densities and, let's be honest, the ability to see threats coming and protect your property. But Mark doesn't have a cabin in the woods or the isolated homestead in Wyoming or Idaho as other guests of Self-Sufficient Life do. He's in southern Florida, not exactly considered high on the list as a safe haven by serious preppers.
When I look at where we're at right now, we're probably in about the best place we could possibly be in Florida as far as geographical location and being a conservative area and being a low population area. I would like to eventually be somewhere where I've got a little bit more land, and my dream's always been to live in the mountains. So it's been a process of there's a lot of give and take in a marriage to make sure that you can live somewhere where everybody's happy. So that's always something that we focus on, my wife and I, is that making sure that we're somewhere that both of us are relatively happy.
So reading between the lines.
One of us wants to live in the mountains, and the other one is slowly evolving and coming around to that. It was a huge leap for my wife to be uprooted out of Fort Lauderdale, which is where we met. We were in the same church, and we met in church and got married. And of course, she had her friends and long-term relationships with the people in that church. And so for me to come along and then want to uproot her out of her life, it was a tough thing for her, and it took her a little while to come around. But, I just saw the population continuing to increase and increase and increase and becoming more and more liberal and less aligned with the types of people that I wanted to be around as far as in the city, and seeing it as maybe not the safest place to be should there be a more catastrophic collapse than what we saw in 2008. Although 2008, you saw major upticks in crime just because people become more desperate when they have less resources available, and that's the bottom line of what's happening in Venezuela right now. Is there's less resources and people are more desperate, and as those conditions become more exacerbated, then the more dangerous a population center becomes. So, it took a little while to talk about that and pray about that, but we eventually got on the same page of saying, okay, well, we can at least both agree that we need to get out of there. And so now we're in a much more rural location, and we're both much happier now.
Before we wrap up and I give you my 3 key takeaways from this segment, let me remind you that the show notes from this episode are available on my website, theselfsufficientlife.com. There's also a complete transcript of this episode if you'd like to read it. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, and please take just a second to leave a review. It helps with the rankings and allows others to learn about a self-sufficient life. You can learn more about Mark and listen to his podcast at prepperrecon.com. Now, I'm not going to give you the obvious takeaways, those being don't do drugs and believe in God. I trust you to make the right choices for your life. I want to focus on what we can learn from Mark, both to be more prepared and self-reliant, but also in terms of self-sufficient income strategies. So here goes, my 3 key takeaways. The first is to get prepared. Now look, I'm not Noah, and I'm not screaming that a catastrophic event is imminent. As I've said before, I don't believe it is. But I'm also not willing to risk my family. So I'm prepared. With not only stored food and supplies, but with the skills to produce food, shelter my family, and keep them safe. Wherever you are, you can take steps to becoming sensibly prepared. Put some food and water aside, at least 2 weeks' worth. In my book, Start Prepping, I outlined exactly what you need to do that, including how much food and water. You can read Start Prepping in print or Kindle, or listen to it on Audible. Don't put your family at risk, especially with all the increasing terrorism and acts of violence. Just start prepping now. The second takeaway is to make the best of your current situation. Personally, I wouldn't be comfortable living where Mark is. But so what? It's nice to dream about a place in the country, but sometimes you just can't move. Friends, jobs, family, lack of resources, they can all keep you cemented firmly in place. But that doesn't mean you can't make the best of it. Mark's growing bananas, starfruit, vegetables, even coffee on his little quarter-acre homestead. He's making the best of what he has. You can too. Even if you're smack in the city, you can still store preps, and you can take classes and learn skills like hunting, canning, gardening, so on. My final takeaway is this. Decide today what you can do to generate self-sufficient income. Mark's making it as a writer and a podcaster, even though he had no background in either. Now, in earlier episodes, you heard me talk about people who are making it as soap makers, farm bloggers, woodcrafters, and more, and none of them had prior experience in those areas. But now they're all employing themselves. There's no one to lay them off. That's a big step toward being truly free, truly self-sufficient. The ability to earn your own income. Maybe you aspire to be a writer like Mark, or a farmer like I once was and some of my upcoming guests are. Even if you keep your day job, you can still start something to earn income on the side. Lots of people do that, and you can too. It's a way for you to take your first step toward freedom by opting out today.
In A Haunt for Jackals by best-selling author Mark Goodwin, Danny Walker's survival retreat has been devastated by violence since the detonation of the EMP. Regent Slusher's designs on absolute power have already brought him to Danny's doorstep once, leaving a trail of blood and heartbreak in his wake. Another conflict with a malicious dictator will spell certain death for the remaining members of the compound. Danny's only hope is to infiltrate Schlusher's camp and bring him down from the inside. It's a risky proposition. If he is caught, he'll be executed as a spy, but there is no other alternative. In this epic struggle between good and evil, Danny's mettle will be tested, his faith will be tried, and he'll have to dig deep for the courage to continue. Buy your copy of A Haunt for Jackals, Book 3 of 7 Cows, Ugly and Gaunt, in paperback, Kindle, or audio edition from Amazon.com today.